Let me tell you something important. Your life is not limited by your potential. It is limited by your patterns. Right now, at this very moment, you are living the result of what you repeatedly do. Not what you hope, not what you intend, but what you consistently act on. And the bridge between the life you have and the life you want is called discipline, not punishment. Not restriction, but self-leadership. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they resist the very structure that would free them. Tonight, we break that resistance. Discipline is not control. It is freedom. Most people misunderstand discipline because they associate it with restriction, pressure, or loss of enjoyment. They imagine discipline as a rigid force that takes away their choices and replaces freedom with obligation. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Discipline does not take freedom away, it creates it. Without discipline, your life is governed by moods, impulses, distractions, and external demands. You wake up reacting instead of directing. When you bring discipline into your life, you begin to decide in advance who you are, how you act, and what you tolerate. That decision removes chaos and replaces it with clarity, and clarity is the foundation of true freedom. Think about what happens when there is no discipline. Time disappears, energy is wasted, focus is constantly interrupted. You may feel free in the moment, but over time that lack of structure turns into stress, regret, and limitation. The absence of discipline doesn't lead to happiness, it leads to frustration. Discipline gives you control over your schedule, your attention, and your actions. It allows you to design your days instead of being consumed by them. When you know what must be done and you do it consistently, your mind becomes calmer, your confidence grows, and your life begins to feel lighter, not heavier. True freedom is not doing whatever feels good in the moment. It is having the power to do what is necessary for long-term fulfillment. Discipline gives you that power. It allows you to say no to distractions so you can say yes to progress. It allows you to delay comfort so you can experience lasting satisfaction. When you are disciplined, you are no longer a slave to procrastination, excuses, or emotional swings. You become self-led, and self-leadership is one of the highest forms of freedom a person can experience. Discipline also frees you from dependence on motivation, on other people, and on circumstances. When you rely on motivation, your progress is unpredictable. When you rely on discipline, your progress is inevitable. Discipline ensures that your actions align with your values, even when conditions are imperfect. It gives you stability in uncertain times and strength when emotions fluctuate. Instead of waiting for the right mood, you create momentum through consistent action. That momentum becomes confidence, and that confidence becomes freedom. Ultimately, discipline is freedom because it gives you ownership of your future. When you practice discipline daily, you are actively shaping the life you want rather than hoping it will appear. You gain the freedom to trust yourself, the freedom to commit fully, and the freedom to grow without fear of collapse. Discipline doesn't limit your life, it expands it. And the more disciplined you become, the more powerful, peaceful, and free your life begins to feel. You don't need more motivation, you need standards. Most people spend their lives chasing motivation, waiting to feel inspired before they take action. They scroll, they watch, they listen, hoping for a surge of energy that will finally push them forward. But motivation is temporary, emotional, and unreliable. It comes and goes depending on mood, comfort, and circumstance. Standards, on the other hand, are stable. Standards are the rules you live by, the behaviors you accept, and the lines you refuse to cross. When your standards are clear, action becomes automatic. You don't negotiate with yourself, you move because that is who you have decided to be. Standards shape identity far more powerfully than goals ever can. Goals live in the future, but standards live in the present. A goal says, I want to be successful. A standard says, this is how I operate every day. When standards are low, excuses feel reasonable. When standards are high, excuses feel unacceptable. Your life will always rise or fall to the level of what you tolerate from yourself. If you tolerate inconsistency, distraction, and self-betrayal, those patterns will define your results. If you demand focus, effort, and integrity, your results must eventually reflect that demand. High standards remove emotional decision-making from your life. You no longer ask, "Do I feel like it?" Because feelings change. You ask, "What does my standard require right now?" That single shift creates extraordinary power. It frees you from the inner debate that drains energy and causes delay. When standards are set, discipline becomes simpler because the decision has already been made. You act not because it's easy or enjoyable, but because it aligns with the identity you have chosen to embody. Raising your standards can feel uncomfortable at first because it forces you to confront habits that no longer serve you. It exposes where you have been settling, where you have been negotiating, and where you have been lowering the bar to avoid discomfort. But that discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of growth. Every time you raise a standard, you upgrade your identity. You become someone who expects more from themselves and as a result receives more from life. In the end, discipline is sustained not by motivation, but by standards you refuse to compromise. Motivation fades, circumstances change, energy fluctuates, standards remain. When you live by clear, non-negotiable standards, your behavior becomes consistent, your confidence becomes grounded, and your progress becomes unstoppable. You don't need to wait to feel ready. You need to decide who you are, and then live in alignment with that decision every single day. Resistance is the voice of the old you. Resistance appears the moment you decide to grow. It shows up as hesitation, delay, doubt, and the quiet urge to stay comfortable. Many people mistake this feeling as a sign that something is wrong, but in reality, resistance is proof that change is trying to occur. The old version of you, the one built on familiar habits, routines, and limitations, does not disappear quietly. It speaks through resistance, trying to pull you back toward what feels safe. Understanding this changes everything, because once you recognize resistance for what it is, you stop obeying it. The old version of you was shaped by past experiences, past failures, and past comfort zones. It learned how to survive, not how to expand. When you challenge that version with discipline, structure, and higher expectations, it responds with excuses. You can do it later. You're tired. This isn't the right time. These thoughts feel logical, but they are not designed to help you grow. They are designed to keep things familiar. Growth always demands separation from who you were, and resistance is the emotional reaction to that separation. Most people lose their momentum because they try to eliminate resistance instead of moving through it. They wait for clarity, confidence, or certainty before acting. But resistance does not disappear with thinking. It disappears with action. The moment you take disciplined action despite discomfort, resistance weakens. Each step forward sends a signal to your mind that you are no longer governed by fear or habit. Over time, what once felt heavy becomes normal, and what once felt impossible becomes routine. Resistance also feeds on overthinking. The more you analyze how hard something feels, the stronger resistance becomes. Discipline breaks this cycle by shifting your focus from emotion to execution. You don't need to feel ready, you need to move. Action interrupts doubt, builds momentum, and creates evidence of capability. The disciplined response to resistance is not force, it is consistency. Quiet, repeated action dismantles resistance faster than any burst of motivation ever could. Eventually, resistance loses its authority. As disciplined actions become habits, the old voice grows quieter, and a new identity begins to take shape. You become someone who acts even when it's uncomfortable, someone who no longer negotiates with hesitation. Resistance will still appear at new levels of growth, but it will no longer stop you. It will simply remind you that you are evolving, and that you are leaving the old version of yourself behind. Discipline builds self-trust, and self-trust builds power. Every disciplined action you take is a promise kept to yourself, and every promise kept strengthens self-trust. Self-trust is not something you are born with. It is something you earn through consistent follow-through. When you say you will do something and you do it, especially when it is uncomfortable, you send a powerful message to your mind: I can rely on myself. Over time, that message becomes belief, and belief becomes confidence. Discipline is the mechanism through which inner trust is built, and without it, confidence remains fragile and dependent on external validation. When self-trust is weak, doubt takes control, you second, guess decisions, overanalyze opportunities, and hesitate at critical moments. But when self-trust is strong, action becomes decisive. Discipline removes the internal conflict between intention and behavior. You stop making empty promises and start creating evidence of reliability. That evidence accumulates quietly, day by day, until one moment you realize you no longer need reassurance. You already know who you are and what you are capable of. Self-trust also creates emotional stability. When you trust yourself, failure does not break you, and success does not inflate you. You remain grounded because your confidence is rooted in behavior, not outcomes. Discipline teaches you that you can handle discomfort, stay consistent, and recover when things don't go as planned. This emotional strength allows you to move forward without fear, because you know that no matter what happens, you will respond with integrity and effort. As self-trust grows, personal power expands. You begin to speak with more certainty, make decisions faster, and take responsibility without hesitation. Discipline aligns your actions with your values, and that alignment creates authority both internally and externally. People sense it. Opportunities respond to it. You are no longer dependent on approval, motivation, or perfect conditions. You become self-directed, self-respecting, and resilient under pressure. Ultimately, discipline transforms you into someone you can count on. That transformation is where true power lies. Power is not dominance over others. It is mastery over yourself. When you trust yourself to do what you say you will do, your potential is no longer theoretical. It becomes practical. Discipline builds that trust, and that trust becomes the foundation upon which an unshakable, powerful life is built. Your future is created in the boring moments. Most people believe transformation comes from dramatic breakthroughs, sudden inspiration, or life-changing events. In reality, your future is shaped in the moments that feel ordinary, repetitive, and unexciting. The boring moments are where discipline lives. They are the quiet hours of preparation, the consistent routines, and the small choices that rarely get attention. While others wait for excitement, disciplined individuals understand that progress is built in silence. These moments may not feel powerful, but they are accumulating power every single day. The mind naturally seeks novelty and excitement, which is why many people abandon consistency once the initial motivation fades. Discipline keeps you moving forward when there is no emotional reward. It teaches you to value process over stimulation and consistency over intensity. When you show up in the boring moments, when no one is watching, applauding, or encouraging, you are training yourself to rely on commitment rather than emotion. That commitment compounds, turning simple actions into extraordinary results over time. Success is rarely the result of one big decision. It is the result of thousands of small, disciplined actions done repeatedly. The future you want is not created by what you do once, but by what you do every day. Each boring moment is a vote for the person you're becoming. When you choose focus over distraction, effort over comfort, and consistency over convenience, you are actively shaping your identity. Over time, that identity produces outcomes that appear impressive to others, even though they were built quietly. The power of boring moments is that they are available to everyone. You don't need perfect conditions, special talent, or extraordinary circumstances. You only need the willingness to show up consistently. Discipline turns these moments into a training ground for character, resilience, and patience. It teaches you to trust the process, even when progress feels slow. Those who master the boring moments gain an advantage not because they are exceptional, but because they are reliable. In the end, your future will not be decided by what you do when you feel inspired. It will be decided by what you do when nothing feels exciting. The boring moments are where habits are formed, standards are reinforced, and discipline becomes identity. When you honor these moments, you build a future that is strong, stable, and sustainable. What feels small today becomes the foundation of everything you will achieve tomorrow.